Most people at their job do want to do a good job. They just are frustrated with the boss they work for or the processes they're in. And so if we start to empower people, it will be more fun for you at work if you actually got stuff done. If it didn't take an act of Congress to make a decision, if it wasn't so frustrated with it, if you could have the freedom to speak up because you're going to do things, people would like that. That would make work more fun. We have to teach them what it looks like to live in a world of accountability so that they want to do it.
Welcome to Real Leadership, the podcast that cuts through the noise to focus on leaders who make, move, and process things in the real economy. Together, we'll discover the strategies and hard-earned lessons from pragmatic, gutsy leaders who operate in a world that is more steak than it is sizzle. Right here, we dive into their stories, challenges, and triumphs to go beneath the surface to the very heart of leadership in the real economy. I'm your host, Jim Weaver, Chief Operating Officer of the Onan Group, where we believe that real leadership does indeed matter. Let's go.
Understanding your labor market is crucial for successful recruitment. Onan Staffing's Recruitment Strategy Guide provides insights specific to your geographic location and the positions you're hiring for. Our Recruitment Strategy Guide delivers a clear snapshot of your labor market and actionable intel to tackle market-specific challenges. With Onan's expertise, we help you navigate and win in your competitive landscape. Empower your recruiting process with the insights you need. Learn more about Onan's Recruitment Strategy Guide at onanstaffing.com/strategy. Today, I'm talking with Robert Hunt from Frisco, Texas. Robert is a little different kind of guest. He's an executive coach and a developer of leaders, and he's also the co-author of a great book called Nobody Cares Until You Do. The book is a call to live beyond blame, excuses, and doubts that hold us back. The book provides a path from victimhood to victory and really has practical advice that speaks to the readers regardless of where they're at on their journey up accountability mountain, as Robert calls it. Robert's professional roots are in sales and marketing. His passion for leadership and nurturing others led him to found the Renaissance Executive Forums in Dallas-Fort Worth in 2013. REF is a CEO peer group that meets monthly to facilitate personal and professional growth. Robert also provides executive coaching and leadership development sessions. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you.
How you doing today?
That sounded like I just graduated high school with my squeaky voice there. I'm doing awesome.
Well, you're excited, so that's good.
I am excited.
I am too. Hey, I finished up your book last weekend.
Awesome.
It was a great read. But writing a book is a serious undertaking.
Oh, man.
So what compelled you to write this book? Why write this book?
My friend Salem Thine and I have been talking about the concepts of accountability for a long time. He's actually a member of our CEO groups. And he shared with me the accountability ladder, it's been around a long time. People have heard of that. And we've been talking about how do we get our teams to buy into this concept of accountability. And then we kept trying to do things with it and communicate it. And he said, we should write a book. So we used to spend quite a bit of time outlining it and coming up with ideas. We just knew we had to tell this story. It was about the same time that when Trump was in office and everybody was mad at everybody, and the social media was ugly, and it's not like the old days where if you disagree, you just say, well, you're stupid, and then let's go back and have a beer and get it over with.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't agree with me, I hate you and I take you out of my life. And it was so dumb. And so we thought we've got to write a book where people stop blaming the world for their junk and they own it. So we knew we'd never get it done because we both run our own companies, and he actually was running two at the time. And so we decided we'd hire a publisher and a ghostwriter, and we are the co-authors because we didn't want to do the work. Like any good business leader, you delegate. And if you know that you're not good at something, you find someone who's better at it, and you let them do their job. And so we outlined it, came up with all the stories, and she just connected out. She did a wonderful job, and we got a book.
Okay. So I like to ask leaders, what's one attribute or one trait they would instill in all their employees if they could? I have a feeling I know what the answer that you would give to that is, but just humor me. What is it? Accountability?
Yeah, what a small world. I think even if I hadn't written a book, I would still say that, because for all my life, I grew up in a time where my parents knew accountability. But in my generation, it seemed like there was always an easy way out. And we've become a society where the government steps in and does a lot of stuff, whether you want it or not. And we give lots of outs for things, and we afford the opportunity to blame and make excuses for stuff. And I've just got to a place in my life where I find more satisfaction in being in control of my own destiny. And if you're a victim, everyone else controls you. But if you're going to live a victorious life, you own it. Now, if it's screwed up, you can fix it, but you own it. And so I think having accountability is something that I'd want our teams to own better. And a lot of teams give the false version of accountability, which is responsibility. And when you're responsible to do something, you do something. You do a thing. I called the customer. Responsible. Accountable is they didn't answer, so I drove over and knocked on the door and got it fixed.
Oh, yeah.
And in the book, Salem tells a story about having the machine down in England, and they needed a part, and it was going to be 6 days or something to get the part over. And every day they lost something like $70,000 in productivity. And the purchasing person said, hey, I got the part ordered. We can get it in 7 days. And they were all really happy because he did something. But they weren't owning it. I mean, if it was your money, would you want to lose $350,000 while you waited for a part? And so he just says, well, where do we get these things from? Well, it's in Scotland. Isn't that like 8 hours away? Can't we just drive there? Now, see, Salem owned it. He owned the responsibility for the outcome. They just were responsible for something to be done. He was accountable for the result of the business, and he saw it differently. So I want people to say, I not only do something, I own the result.
How do you get your team to come along on that, to think that way? What advice would you give business leaders? That is a frustration. I remember that story. It's a great story, and I could relate to it. How do you get your team to come along on this, do you think?
I think because at some point they start to look around and say, I'm tired of being a victim of the circumstances. If you're an employee and you work for a bad boss and you go to work and you hate your job every day, but you stay there, you play the victim role. There's a lot of options. If you have a team that's dysfunctional and you don't address it, it's a miserable team to be a part of. There's a lot of options. But instead, people complain, or they just do workarounds, or they become bitter themselves. That's not accountability. So when people start to see the tools that will allow them to be accountable and actually enjoy life, because isn't it more fun to be able to do things the way you want to get them done, to own it and not be stepped on by everyone and everything? And that's what victims act like. I have a bad boss. Well, quit. Or talk to that boss, or learn what makes them mad at you, or there's 1,000 options. But instead, we just blame or complain or make excuses and do workaround, and that's not living the life you really want.
Okay, that applies to me, application. But how do you get a team to be accountable, or can you?
No, you can't hold anyone accountable. There's a phrase we say as leaders a lot of time, I'm going to hold my team accountable. Well, you really can't. Because if I ask you, hey, did you do that? You could lie. And if I tell you to do it and you don't do it, am I going to fire you every time you don't do something? So there really isn't this ability. And if I do fire you, then so you've left. You're no longer accountable either way. Now you're just gone. So there's not an easy solution to fire everybody every time something doesn't go right. You have to teach them the desire that your life is better when you own it. You're not frustrated trying to work with a team, because most people at their job do want to do a good job. They just are frustrated with the boss they work for or the processes they're in. And so if we start to empower people, it will be more fun for you at work if you actually got stuff done. If it didn't take an act of Congress to make a decision, if it wasn't so frustrated with it, if you could have the freedom to speak up because you're going to do things, people would like that. That would make work more fun. We have to teach them what it looks like to live in a world of accountability so that they want to do it.
Land top technical and professional talent with Focus. Focus specializes in direct hire and contract placements, connecting you to exceptional candidates in IT, engineering, management, and more. Elevate your team with Focus. Visit getinfocus.com.
Yeah, that's good. I have a rant that I go on. I just talk about, we're going to do the time. 40 to 50 hours a week for 40 to 50 years of our life.
Why not?
Why not be really good?
Yeah.
And this whole accountability, why not own it? I think that is a compelling, vision to cast. That's good, man. You were, looking at your resume, you had a really nice VP level sales and marketing career going, and it looks like you made a pretty deliberate turn in your career.
I did.
What got you to that point that you made that switch? Because most people would. That's a risky move. Most people would probably stay the course and not follow what I assume was your dream. So what led you to that tipping point of making the switch?
And I did that when I was 50 years old. So if you think you're too old to change something, you're not. And so when I was 50, I ran into the guy who owned the franchise here in the Dallas area, and he was telling me what he does. And I as I listened to him tell the stories, I said, so people pay you to help them and to care about them? That's like a thing? And it was the perfect job for me, because I had learned a few years before that. I read a book by Cheryl Batchelder called Dare to Serve Leadership. And she was the CEO of Popeye's Chicken and turned it around and did a phenomenal job. And in that book, she tells you how to define your personal purpose. And I did. I did the exercise and I defined it. And I came up with my purpose is to help people remove obstacles that keep them from being their best. So when I heard there was a job to do that, oh my gosh, I can live out my purpose in my job. I had to go. And so I immediately said, I want to sign up. I want to be part of this. I want to learn how to do it. Got trained on how to facilitate and lead groups. And by the end of the next year, I had my first group.
Wow. So tell the listeners what Renaissance Executive Forum is, REF. That's your it's a
CEO peer group. And so I'm part of a franchise that's international. And they do this all around the world. And basically the idea is group learning. It's like if you've ever been a part of a peer situation where you're influenced by your peers. And so if you have a board, that's peers. You bring in people. If you have a board, you bring in people who are hopefully smarter than you and have success and succeed in doing things. And they can add to your knowledge and wisdom. They can challenge you and redirect you and encourage and help you. That's what a board does. But your buddies can be an influence on you, but not always in a good way. When you think about how many dumb decisions you made with your friends growing up in life and all that, you want to surround yourself with people who have character, people who will help you be the best version of yourself. So my job is to find leaders who are passionate about what they do, and that they will be willing to come together and be radically transparent and open with one another, so that we can say, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm frustrated with this. I have a problem. And then because you're sharing that, then the group can then give you their experiences of what they've done, and they can sharpen you by sharing what they've gone through. We don't give each other the opinion. We share our experiences, because experiences are never wrong. Opinions are often wrong.
Right.
And the beauty of group learning is that we just ask you enough questions and share our experiences, and you self-discover what you want to do, and then you own it. And so it's a pretty cool process. It's all private. It's the same people every month coming together, challenging each other, learning from each other. Sometimes we've need to kick you in the pants, and sometimes you need a hug. But the CEOs carry a tremendous burden that no one else really understands. They go to bed and wake up with these things in their head that they're already feeling, and everyone else just has a job. The final decision maker is haunted by stuff that no one will ever understand unless they have that same responsibility. It's a lonely spot. Yeah. It can be. It is. I mean, and when we come together, and not everyone's dealing with the same problem, but I'd rather learn from your problem than have to learn from my problem. Yeah. You also do executive coaching. So you have the combination of these CEO groups and executive coaching that you're doing. So what are the biggest challenges you see executive leadership wrestling with over the last couple of years here? Well, one of the reasons I do coaching is because everybody should have a coach. A coach is that person who you can talk to privately about stuff and really be vulnerable and transparent in a much deeper way than you can in the groups. But the things that I've seen people go through in the last 3 years have been just so tough. We survived COVID, which was just weird. And then we tooled up and survived 21, which was just like the government gave a lot of money so you could spend stuff, but you didn't know what you could do. And then you had money, but you couldn't buy anything because there was inventory shortage.
Working.
Yeah. And then 22 came along, and we got through the crunch with employees and with supplies, but it was still resettling into what prices are what and how can we go to market with it and what things are left. 23, man, everyone's exhausted. Yeah. If I had to use one word to describe it, they're just exhausted and burned out. And I think that's the problem we're facing now is you don't even recognize how tired you are. But we make decisions in exhausted mode all the time. Another topic I'm real passionate about is margin, where you create room in your life to avoid overload. But I think we've run on overload for so many years, we don't even know that we're in overload anymore. So then when it gets really, really bad, like is what we've gone through and where we are today, you're in dangerous decision-making mode. You're fatigued, you're exhausted. In some cases, you're mentally hurt, and yet you show up at work and you're supposed to make these great decisions every day. I mean, it's just tough. We've been partnering with a company called the Identity Fund that provides counseling services because we need support. We need real help from professionals. And my clients are using their services and they're getting help and they're sitting and having real professional discussions because it's a beatdown and we need someone who's going to care for us and encourage us to be our best when we're just tired.
Yeah. You mentioned that you had brought up this idea of margin, and that was something you had changed your mind on in recent years. So expand on that a little bit. I think that's an interesting idea, and I think it's something that we can overlook in our go lifestyle.
Yeah, margin set me on the journey that led me to write Nobody Cares. Because I too, like most people, have just got used to living in overload. And one of my overloads was my finances. And the book Margin puts this awareness of 4 buckets: time, finances, health, and emotions. And in those 4 buckets, you don't really know how much things are overloaded until you usually go past it. So I can look at my calendar and I can say, I have no time. Look at my calendar, it's ridiculous. And you say, let's go to lunch. Yeah, November 15th, give me a call. And we live like this, and that's normal. Yeah. But then after a while, because it's always so full, we get used to it, and then we have these spikes that go over it, and we run in a deficit, and we're making really bad choices. And I had allowed myself to get into really serious debt. The book talks about that. Yes. And it affected my decision-making process on how I run my business. I was deathly a fear of losing clients. So I wouldn't say something to someone on fear that maybe I'd lose them because I'd offend them or challenge them and they'd get mad and leave. So I would pull my punches in cases, and I'd take sometimes jobs in client situations that weren't great, but I wanted the money because I was living in a deficit mindset. Yeah. And so all these things, they pour into each other. We need to create a life that has some room for the unexpected to happen because it always happens. And I can never measure my emotion. I can measure my time. I can measure my money. I can cheat my money. I can get more debt and go over the load.
Right. But for a while.
Yeah, for a while. And for most of America, a long while. Because most of America is living paycheck to paycheck, and they're already overextended. And then the last one is your health. You think, no big deal. I'll just get 3 hours of sleep tonight. I'll get 5 hours. And after a couple of days, you're just so tired, but you don't even notice it anymore because you just show up and do the work. But you're living on it's the same thing as being drunk. The effect on your brain, you might as well drink and go to work. And some people do, I think, but there's nothing you would never do that. That's just foolishness. But you get lack of sleep, you carry a lot of stress, you're not healthy, you overdose on alcohol or smoking or television or whatever feeds your brain and helps you to unplug at the end of the night. But you're exhausted. So then the emotional bucket is getting smaller and smaller. There's no room, and then anything that happens at all, you just lose it. Yeah. So I think we need to be proactive in creating a world of margin in our lives. Yeah. You can learn more about that on margindfw.com, by the way. I got that domain so we can direct people to that article.
So is that was an article?
Yeah, I wrote it on LinkedIn. It's got a video connected to it, and it's margindfw.com, and the video that explains it. And I'm very passionate about that. I get speaking opportunities on this topic all the time.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll link out to that in the show notes. That's great. That's a great topic. I try to, I start with the question of, okay, what do I need to do? How do I need to structure my time, my life so that I show up the way I need to show up? And sometimes working the extra 10 hours is actually less productive.
It is.
You know,
it is. And he actually talks about in the book that as you go up in productivity, stress increases. And there's this magical point where A and B hit where you are the most productive with the most stress, and that's a great place to stop. But we just keep going. And at that point where our productivity goes down and we're still adding stress. So you're beating yourself up for less productivity. What you should do is stop and go play with your kids, or go read a book, or go to the gym, or do anything that feeds your soul, and you can start over again and be fresh the next day. But instead, you work long hours, you come home, put the kids to bed, go back to the computer and try and somehow crank out good work at 10 o'clock at night after a stressful day and 2 bourbons. Come on.
Yeah. That is a picture that I'm sure resonates with folks. In your book, you talk about satisfaction and happiness kind of as the pinnacle of what you're trying to achieve with your life and what you're doing, and there are a lot of accomplished leaders and entrepreneurs that are not happy and not satisfied. So what do you think is typically going on there? What are some of the things you've seen are leading to that dissatisfaction, that lack of happiness when you've got a high achiever, but they're miserable? And
they're usually only measuring the things that they're proud of. If I say, hey, how's things going? You say, it's excellent. I'm doing excellent. But you're only saying that because your company finally hit $50 million a year in revenue. But you should look at all the buckets of your life. How's your marriage? How's your health? How's your kids? How's your time with God? Having a relationship with God is just as important as work, because it's part of who we are. But for some reason, we become weird about it. Don't talk about God, and then tuck it over here. And so 5 days a week, you have to somehow hide God. And there's this thing that's part of you that you don't take to work all day. It'd be like me denying I'm married when I go to work. I don't have a wife.
Right.
That's just nonsense. And so we just have to stuff everything down just to say that we're having success in one area. Everything has to be above zero to be able to say you're actually having a good life. If you're really rich but you have no friends, what would that be like?
Right.
So I think as we look at people and how they can find satisfaction, we're not saying that if you follow the principles of accountability, you're going to have ultimate joy. But we already know where we're not satisfied if we really step back and take a look at it. And all I'm encouraging people to do is just own it enough to make it to where you're having the life you want. I may not be the richest guy I know. I may not have the most successful business, but I want to have a good marriage, and I want to have fun, and I want to have time with my kids and friendships. And so all these things should be considered in the light of what you really want your life to be like. I think we're spent a lot more time just trying to manage the one we ended up with instead of chasing the one we really want.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think that I definitely am better at work. If I'm not dialed in with my wife, if I'm not anchored spiritually, if I haven't gotten sleep, or feel like I'm getting out of shape, I am not as good at work. It's integrated.
Yeah, it is.
I don't think it's sustainable long term if we don't have all of those elements work. They feed each other when we do it the right way.
And you can feel it. If I go to work and I've had a fight with Kathy, I'm in my car driving away going, well, this day sucks. I haven't gone anywhere yet. And I already don't want to do anything. And I know I got to come home and deal with it. So that haunts me all day. And it was 99% of the chance it's my fault because I always say the wrong thing. I have a great wife. And so if I leave that day, man, I just don't have my game on. And then what if mom's in the hospital? What if you've got a looming bill that's coming up in a week? What if your kid's struggling with drugs? All this stuff that goes on, and somehow you're supposed to show up at work and just like, oh, nothing's wrong, everything's good. And you can pretend all you want, but it's there. Yeah. It's like a machine that's got a leaky valve and it's got one of the pistons that's stuck and things are clogged. It still runs, you're still making stuff, but it's about to explode. And we get that way, and yet we've done it for so long, we don't know the difference. We're just used to it. Until you actually get to where everything fails at the same time, and then it's ugly.
Yeah.
Facing sudden growth or limited by traditional financing? Momentum Capital Funding empowers businesses with real-time cash flow through AR factoring. Get the funding you need and fuel your success. Visit MomentumCapitalFunding.com to learn more.
I've heard the advice a lot. You have the chapter on the boulder, the big boulder. That's one of the that you got to get around in the climb up accountability mountain. And I've heard a lot of people give the advice, never quit. But it seems to me that sometimes quitting is the wise choice. Like there's a time when, so as a coach, how do you guide people through the process of deciding whether or not to let go of a dream or a particular ambition? How do you think about that? How do you guide somebody through that?
That's the kind of stuff we talk about in our group. So I really do encourage people to be in a group somewhere of people you respect that you can listen to and share your heart and let them give you wisdom. But sometimes chasing a dream is not as valuable as the other dream you have. And I had a client a year or two ago talked about rapid growth they were chasing, and everything was focused on the business until their son got a problem with drugs. And then all of a sudden, this quest that he was on just wasn't as important. And so I think you just have to choose the time where sometimes we need to redirect. So the word quit sounds so harsh, but when you're chasing something and it's not working, all wise leaders need to evaluate the process and say, is this still the best choice? Do we need to go in a different direction? But if your pride is keeping you from ever using the word quit, then just say, redirect my efforts. Because there's a lot of things we can do with our life, but we only have a certain amount of time. There's only 24 hours in a day. And if you want to spin it going after something isn't going to work, that's foolishness. We surround ourselves with people who give us wise counsel. We continually reevaluate, set agile mindset where you go, do something, try, evaluate it, adjust, go do it again. And I think at some point you need to cut bait and go, this isn't what I want to do. That's why we changed the analogy from a ladder to a mountain. Because in climbing a mountain, you might say, I'm going to set up base camp here for a while and figure out what I'm doing. And then I can see if I'm ready to take that next step. Or you can get off the mountain and go to another mountain. But there would only be one ladder, and we didn't like the analogy, so the mountain was what we could relate to better.
Yeah, I really like the mountain metaphor. And it's sort of like you get to the next stop, and it's kind of like a vista. You can look out, see where you've come, and then you move on, and it there's always that desire to get to the next level. I think that's a great metaphor as opposed to the ladder. I like it for sure. What you talked about the big picture, culturally, how we are really a society that does a lot of blaming, not a lot of accountability. How did we get here? And how do we reverse the trend?
Yeah, we got here over years and years of building a society that made it easy for us to not have to try. And with good intentions, I believe, there's a lot of people who would want to look out for other people and say, well, let us help you. And that's good. That's proper. But at some point, we make it easy for people to not take any ownership on something. And we give people the easy way out, and so they don't have to put the effort in. And so somewhere between not helping anyone, being a cold fish, and doing so much that you empower people to be dependent on someone else is where we should end up. I don't know how to do that. But I know that the process for us to go back to being a society where we own our own junk is just for us to say, look at your life. Are you satisfied? And if you're not, what are you willing to do about it? And we say when the pain of where you are is worse than the pain of where you have to go, you'll change. But people don't stop and really look at their lives. They just go, well, I'm making minimum payments on my credit card, so I guess I'm okay. And that sounds great till you lose your job, and then you can't make minimum payments on your credit card, which then leads to fights, and then your marriage, which was already struggling, now gets worse, and you take a bunch of jobs, so you're never home with the kids. So I just want people to own their life and drive their own life and get the results they want. But I think we're just on that treadmill so much that we're not taking the time to look. That's why we put the assessment in the book. Stop. Declare to yourself, what do I want my life to look like? I don't think people are doing that. That's the first step. Take a satisfaction assessment. You can go to the website, do it on there. It's private. Download your own copy and then declare to yourself, honestly, I don't like this. Great. Now what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
And I think that's the way we're going to turn things around again, is that we're not spending our time telling each other how to live. But if we just owned our own junk, it'd be a very different world.
And the idea of trying to impact the world or change the world or to speak out on some injustice in the world when I don't have my act together is kind of silly.
Yeah, it's comical.
You know?
And we're very comfortable to point out everyone else's issues, but it really does start with you. My kid's going to grow up to be a little mini version of me. He's going to watch me, and he's going to be like me. So if I don't own it, if I don't follow it and live it out, I'm going to get what I'm going to get. And I think at the very least, to have satisfaction that you're living the life you really want, it just has to be intentional. It isn't that hard. We've just become lazy. We'll just take whatever's in front of us, and then we'll bitch and moan about it. Mm-hmm. And that's just worse. I think the stress of having to make changes is less painful than living a long life of sitting like you're under someone's thumb and just miserable.
Yeah, yeah. So looking back at your life, you're obviously a very circumspect guy. What's a favorite failure that you had that maybe was a turning point for you? Or
that's a really weird statement. Favorite failure. My favorite failure. I love the choice of those words. Golly.
Something that maybe sent you in another direction, taught you a great lesson.
Yeah, I think I failed to own my journey when it came to my finances. Every year we wouldn't have enough money to live the way we wanted to live, so we just put it on a credit card. And then I had to keep that current to a certain level, so I just wouldn't pay my taxes. And then the government gives businesses a little bit of an IOU, and you can make payments. And I think I just kept kicking the can down the line. You know, your business should live according to the revenue it generates. If you have a small business, live like it's a small business. And if you're not saving money and putting away for things that go wrong, you're being foolish. And so I didn't do a reality check after the third, fourth, or fifth year. I thought, hey, I'm not making the kind of money I need to have to live in this house. I could have cut bait years ago.
Yeah.
But because of pride and because I felt a bit of a failure that I wasn't giving my family the life that I wanted to give them, because even though they were in a nice house, we weren't doing the vacations our friends were doing, and we weren't having the stuff, which I'm not really into stuff, but I do always feel like I want to be a good dad and give my kids things.
Sure.
So there's a little bit of a guilt trip going on. So I would just continue to spend checks I didn't have and kick the can down the road. And then eventually I had to own it, and that's where we got in 2019. But I think that deficit mindset affected all my decisions, and my wife could feel my stress, and I would get cranky about simple things that would cost money because I was already so stressed about the money. So I think if I had pulled the plug early on, I think we would have had a lot nicer years than those middle years there.
My wife and I started out our marriage we got pretty deep in debt, especially for the low income we were at. So we kind of learned that lesson early and really had to struggle through that. But then later on started doing well, and we wanted to buy a lake house. So we bought the lake house. It was a dream. And we bought one within our means, which meant it was kind of an old crappy lake house. and it was about an hour and 15 minutes away. And so we can't we took the old boat that came with the house, and that was always breaking down, and we had plumbing issues. And then we're like, well, maybe we should get some renters in there and, offset this. We could put it on Airbnb. So we did that. And then there wasn't good infrastructure around. So then we have to go to support the house. Like, you couldn't even pay anybody. It was so rural to go, so then we'd have to go down, and this vacation home became just an pain.
Yeah.
And finally, after 4 years of, and we had some good times down there. We definitely did. But I was just...
We could have had that renting.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
And that's a great example that's a good example where you decide to quit.
Yes.
Because you go, this isn't smart.
Right.
And I don't know how you can ever make great decisions like that in a void. You have to surround yourself with people who you can tell stuff and go, why are you doing that, man? And they'll help talk you out of it or talk you through it. Again, back to the reason why we have these CEO groups. In your mind, you're like, this is working out. We're doing this. We're going to fix it up. And after year one and after year two and after year three, But if you had told someone with all transparency, here's what I do, here's how I spend my weekends, I come back exhausted because I spent the whole week trying to fix the plumbing, and I didn't go and spend fun in the lake, I worked at the lake.
Yeah.
And if you told them all that, and so they would challenge you, dude, is that what you really want? We never tell each other what to do, but we ask, is that what you want? And if you're being honest, you have friends who can go, that doesn't sound like you're doing what you want. And we need people like that who can see past our emotion. Our emotions lie to us so much. And so we get the pride going, and we get, this is going to be great. And I see the same kind of scenario with people who say, I'm going to buy this company, this is going to be great. And they start outlining it. We're like, that's a dog. Don't touch that. What are you talking about? Do you not see all these red flags? But if they hadn't told us, there was so much emotion. They were buying out their competitor. They're going to have a bigger name than they were before. This is going to put them in 2 states. Whatever the thing was, and the ego was just going.
Yes.
And having people who know you and know that you want to spend more time being with your kids and relaxing and avoiding mental breakdown can challenge you because you've invited them in.
Yes, that's good. That's really good. You do. You have other groups that are not just for top level executives as well, right?
Yeah, I have a group for the trusted advisors, and Thomas is in that group with us.
Yes,
he's awesome.
He's our BDM or our area BDM down in DFW. Yeah,
he's a great guy. And we have another group we just started for HR leaders that we just started last month, and that's unique. I have always avoided vertical groups because I'm a marketing guy, so I'll just do a marketing group. But the problem with that is that these people tend to be where their boss won't let them go. And so I want to have as much impact and change in people's lives as I can. So I start at the top because you can let yourself go. And if you work for someone else, they can say, no, you can't take time. Oh, we got a problem here. Don't go to that. And so I've always hesitated with it. But for some reason, in the last year, I've just been seeing the HR people in my world have such a beat down right now. Can you imagine being an HR manager and going through COVID?
Yeah.
And then going through all the ramifications that came after. I mean, we thought diversity and inclusion was tough and all the things they've had to go through, but they're just beat up. And I just felt like I need to run a group for HR people.
Yeah,
so we started
great.
last month, had 8 people at the first meeting, which is unheard of, and 4 people waiting to get into the group. They'll join us next month. And so I don't know where this will go, but I just feel like I have a skill and I have a passion, and I'm going to do whatever God brings my way.
Yeah. Well, I can attest having a coach. I'm not part of a group like that, but I can see the value. And well, actually, this is kind of my group, the podcast. I'm trying to develop those relationships through this. That's one of my objectives with doing this. But I have a coach, and I agree. It's really nice to have somebody who you can. We have to wear a mask at work. We just have to.
Yeah.
And there are just some things I can't tell the partners here that I'm experiencing. And there's things I can't tell the folks that report to me here, but I can talk to my coach about it. And same thing with these mastermind groups or the peer groups. Mm-hmm. I definitely see huge value in that. So it's great you're doing it.
And I know you said mask, but I think you're a genuine enough guy just from the time we spent together. I don't think you need to wear a mask. I think that we do need to do some things so our employees don't freak out because they're not allowed to know everything.
Right.
But I think, because like if I'm selling the company or what someone makes for a living versus what they make, there's some things that are common sense. But at the end of the day, the more transparent we are, the more we build trust with our employees because they know more than you think they know. Mm. And if we wear a mask, they usually see through it, and then they wonder, what else is he lying to me about?
Yeah.
I just did a session on how to build trust with a company in Ennis yesterday, and we spent the whole morning talking about transparency because when you think you're putting on a good face and they see past it, they don't trust you anymore. And so it's okay to say, I can't really talk about the details, but I want to let you guys know I'm really sad today. And that's being real. I don't have to go into the fact that Susie gave notice she's leaving and we're going to have to find a new sales manager. It comes down to they see something's going on. And by you being real, you're encouraging them to be real. And when they're real, they can get help. And we don't have a bunch of people walking around with a big giant bag of crap over their shoulder. But we actually allow them to dump it out once in a while and get encouragement and help from the people they spend 8 to 10 hours a day with. I think that is a cool environment to work at.
That's a great place to land. Thanks, Robert.
Man,
that was
my
wonderful.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, so before we go, we're going to put things in the show notes, but would you let folks know how to get your book, how to find out about your REF groups, and anything else you want to put out there? So where can people find you?
Thank you. We have a website called nobodycaresbook.com, and I prefer people buy it from me because I make more money.
Yeah.
So let's be honest. But it also it also comes with a bookmark and a sticker, so I know that's a big selling point. Yeah. We want people to read the book the right way, and after we wrote it, we found that there were some things that we didn't emphasize, like you must take the satisfaction assessment. If you don't, the rest of the book misses some of the punch. So we put that in there. So nobodycaresbook.com, and it's a community we're trying to build where people come in and tell their stories. And some of your employees have actually contributed to our website by telling their stories on our website. And we want to encourage other people to feel emboldened by seeing other people who are walking this journey and be encouraged to be accountable. So that's the book. We're on all kinds of social media things, LinkedIn and Facebook and all that good stuff. I'm on LinkedIn, and my business is REF Dallas, like Renaissance Executive Forums Dallas.com. And you can find us there and learn about our CEO groups.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right, Robert. Thank you so much.
This was fun.
Likewise. Yeah, I enjoyed it too. Okay, until next time, keep it real. Thank you for listening. This podcast was powered by Onin, a family of staffing companies providing real staffing solutions to manufacturing, logistics, and food processing companies across the United States of America. To get in touch or learn more about partnering with an Onin Group company, visit us at www.oningroup.com. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.